Wait, before you scroll, I need you to stay here for a moment. Just a moment, because what I'm about to tell you, I've never said out loud. Not to my business partners, not to the people who follow my work, not even to the version of myself I used to be so proud of. This is going to cost me something to say, and I'm going to say it anyway. I was 31 years old, standing in a glass office on the 14th floor of a building I had helped build from nothing, looking out at a city that didn't know my name yet, but would. I had a watch that cost more than my first car. I had a team of 23 people who believed in me with the kind of faith that I had never allowed myself to direct inward. I had a calendar so full that sleeping felt like a scheduling conflict. I had metrics, projections, quarterly reviews, expansion plans, a waiting list of investors, and a morning routine that I had optimized to the minute. I had everything, and I was so empty I could hear it. Not a poetic emptiness, not the kind they make movies about. A quiet, ambient, humming emptiness, like a refrigerator running in a room with no food in it, functional, persistent, cold. I didn't collapse dramatically. There was no single moment where the floor gave way and the music swelled. It was slower than that, more boring than that, more honest than that. I sat down at my desk one Tuesday morning. I remember it was a Tuesday because I had back-to-back calls that I had been dreading, and I just sat there, didn't open my laptop, didn't check my phone, just sat. And for the first time in maybe 4 years, I let myself actually feel the room I was sitting in, the quality of the light, the silence behind the ambient city noise, the strange, uninvited thought that appeared in my chest like a hand pressing gently from the inside. Is this it? Not, is this all there is? That's a question born from ingratitude, and that's not what this was. It was more precise than that, more surgical. It was, is this the thing you were running toward? Because you're here now. You arrived, and you feel exactly the same as you did before you started. That was the most terrifying thought I had ever had, because it implied something I wasn't ready to accept, that the problem was never the destination. I built the morning routine first. 4:30 wake, cold water, 40 minutes of movement. Journaling that was really just performance reviews of my own psychology, reading 20 pages of something that would make me sharper, faster, better. I built it like a machine and I ran it like a religion. I built the discipline next, no excuses, consistency. Show up even when you don't want to, especially when you don't want to. I was proud of that. I told other people about it. I became quietly a person who looked at softness with suspicion, including his own. I built the network, carefully, strategically. People who could open doors, who could see my potential before the market could price it. I was generous with my time when it served a direction. I was unavailable when it didn't. I called that boundaries. I called it protecting my energy. I called it a lot of things. I built the identity. The man who doesn't need much, who doesn't complain, who figures it out, who has read the books and done the work and knows the frameworks and can hold a room with quiet authority, who is in control, who has it together. That last one was the most expensive thing I ever constructed. And the most fragile. Here's what I learned about building. You can build anything you want. The human capacity for construction is genuinely extraordinary. You can build habits and systems and companies and reputations and bank accounts and bodies and belief systems. You can stack brick after brick after brick until what you've made casts a shadow, until people stand in that shadow and call you impressive. But there is a question that construction cannot answer. And I didn't know that yet. I thought if I built enough, I would finally feel safe. That was the operating system underneath everything. This childhood-installed belief that love and safety were conditional, that you had to earn your place in any room you entered, that vulnerability was a cost with no return, that needing something from another person was a kind of weakness that would eventually be used against you. I didn't know that's what I believed. I thought I was just ambitious. I thought I was just driven. I thought the distance I kept between myself and other people was sophistication, not armor. Tell me something. When was the last time someone asked you how you were and you told them the truth? Not good, busy, you know how it is. The truth, the version underneath that answer, the version that lives in the Tuesday silences, because I had not told anyone the truth in so long that I had stopped being able to locate it quickly. I had to excavate, and what I found when I dug down was a man who was deeply, privately exhausted. Not from the work, but from the performance of having the work handled. She came into my life the way significant things tend to, without announcement, without drama, through a door I had left open by accident. We met through a mutual colleague. A dinner, 12 people at a table. She was seated 3 chairs away and she laughed at something someone said. Not the polished laugh people use in professional settings, the one calibrated for social safety. She laughed with her whole face, like someone who had not learned yet to be careful about being seen enjoying herself. I noticed that. I filed it away. We talked at the end of the night, standing near the door while people gathered coats. She asked me what I was working on. I gave her the version I gave everyone, the polished overview, the vision, the metrics of momentum. She listened, and then she asked a question that no one in 4 years of networking dinners had asked me. She said, "Does it make you happy?" Not what's your growth strategy, not who are your investors, not how do you see that scaling, does it make you happy? I laughed. I said something clever that didn't answer the question. She smiled like she knew exactly what I had done, and she didn't push. She just let the deflection sit there between us, visible and unaddressed, like she was offering me the option to try again if I ever wanted to. I thought about that question for 3 weeks. I built reasons not to pursue her. I was good at that. My mind was extremely well trained in the construction of logical barriers to things that frightened me. I was too busy. The timing was wrong. She seemed like someone who would want things I didn't have bandwidth for. Presence, consistency, emotional availability. I had a company to run. I had a version of myself to maintain. Relationships, real ones, required a kind of openness that felt like leaving a wound uncovered, so I kept my distance. I was polite, professional, occasionally warm in the carefully calibrated way of someone who has learned to simulate connection without risking it, but she was patient in a way I didn't know how to process. Not patient in a passive waiting way. Patient in the way of someone who is already full, who doesn't need anything from you, and therefore has no agenda to rush you. She was just present, consistently, quietly, undemandingly present. We started talking more, first about work, then about ideas, then about the edges of ideas, the places where logic runs out and something more honest begins. She would say things that unsettled me in ways I couldn't fully articulate. Not provocative things, just true things, said plainly, without decoration, without the usual social cushioning that people use to make truth more palatable. She told me once early on, "You're very good at being impressive. I'm more curious about who you are when you're not performing." I didn't know what to do with that. So I did what I always did. I turned it into motivation. I thought about it for days, but I framed it as a challenge to optimize, as if she had identified an area of weakness in my performance and I needed to improve my metrics in the category of authenticity. I told you, the operating system runs deep, music, heavier, building. Here is where the story turns in a direction I didn't expect. Her parents didn't accept me, not for reasons I had anticipated, not for reasons I could argue against with facts or credentials, not because I wasn't successful enough or educated enough or stable enough. No. They didn't accept me because of where I came from, because of the distance between my origin and their expectations, because of something that had nothing to do with who I had built myself to be and everything to do with who I had been before the building began. I had spent a decade constructing a version of myself that was measurably, demonstrably worthy, and here was a wall that construction couldn't touch. I want to be honest about what that did to me. It broke something. Not the way things break in movies, not a dramatic shattering with a climactic score. It broke the way ice cracks in spring, slowly, then all at once, the surface giving way to the pressure of something warmer underneath that had been building for a long time. What broke was the belief, the deep, unexamined foundational belief, that achievement was protection, that if you built enough, you would finally be beyond judgment, beyond rejection, beyond the specific pain of being seen as insufficient by people whose opinion carried weight in the life of someone you loved. I had been running from a feeling my entire career, and here it was, standing at the door, she cried, not in front of her parents. Later, alone with me in a car parked outside a restaurant where we had gone because neither of us could pretend to be hungry. She cried with the specific exhaustion of someone caught between two loyalties that should never have been placed in opposition. And I watched her, and I felt something that I had spent years fortifying myself against, feeling helplessness. I could not fix this. I could not optimize this. I could not make a plan for this and execute it and see results. I could not out-earn the problem or out-hustle the dynamic or reframe my way to a solution. The tools I had spent a decade sharpening were useless here. I held her hand. That was all I had, and it felt, in that moment, completely inadequate. But here's what she did. Here's what I need you to understand about her. She didn't leave. She didn't shrink. She didn't apologize for her parents or pretend the situation was simpler than it was or perform resilience for my benefit. She cried, and then she was quiet, and then she looked at me and said, "I need you to not disappear on me right now." She knew. She already knew without me saying anything that my instinct when hurt was to evacuate, to become efficient, to redirect the pain into productivity, to vanish into the work where I was safe, where the metrics were clear, where I was in control. She knew, and she named it, and she asked me not to do it. That was the most intimate thing anyone had ever asked of me. Look at me for a second. I need you to understand what happened next, because this is the part that nobody tells you. This is the part that gets edited out of the success story because it doesn't fit the narrative of the self-made person who figures everything out alone. I stayed in the discomfort. I didn't open my laptop that night. I didn't respond to messages. I didn't make a plan or write in my journal or exercise or do any of the things I had trained myself to do when the internal weather became difficult. I just stayed present in that car, in that feeling, in that inadequacy, with another person who was also inadequate in that moment, and we held the weight of it together, and nothing was resolved. Nothing was fixed. Her parents didn't change their minds. The situation didn't improve. We drove home later in a silence that wasn't comfortable or uncomfortable. It was just honest. The silence of two people who were in something real together, and I felt underneath the pain, underneath the helplessness, underneath the fear, something I hadn't felt in 4 years. I felt present, not productive, not impressive, not optimized, just present in a real moment with a real person, experiencing a real thing. And I thought, oh, this is what I've been building the absence of. Here's what I learned. There are two kinds of structures you can build with your life. I didn't know this until I was 31 years old, sitting in a car that smelled like fast food we hadn't eaten, holding the hand of a woman whose parents didn't want her to love me. The first kind of structure is an empire. An empire is built for visibility, for scale, for the respect of people who may not know you and will probably never love you. An empire is designed to impress. Its foundation is performance. Its walls are made of achievement stacked on achievement. It is measured in metrics that other people can verify. It is, in its way, a monument to the terror of being ordinary. I had built an empire, and I had lived in it alone. The second kind of structure is a home. A home is built for inhabiting. It doesn't need to impress anyone who doesn't live there. Its foundation is not performance, it's presence. It's built slowly, from the inside out, from the 1,000 invisible choices to show up honestly even when you'd rather show up impressively. Its walls are made of conversations that didn't go anywhere convenient, of silences that didn't get filled with productivity, of moments where you said, I don't know, and I'm scared, and I need help, and the person across from you didn't flinch. An empire can stand without you. That's actually its whole point. A home falls apart the moment you stop being in it. I had been building the wrong structure, for the wrong audience, for the wrong reasons. Don't deny it. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You have a version of this. Maybe it's not a company. Maybe it's a degree, or a body, or a reputation, or a social media presence, or a persona you put on every morning with your clothes. Some structure you've been building, and it keeps getting more impressive, and you keep waiting for the feeling of enough, and the feeling never comes, and you've started to wonder in the private, uncurated hours if something is wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. The structure is just missing a foundation. And you already know what the foundation is. You've known for a long time. You've just been afraid of it. Because the foundation requires the one thing that achievement cannot provide and cannot protect you from: being known, being actually, completely, uncomfortably, dangerously known. Known when you're scared. Known when you're wrong. Known when you have no plan. Known in the Tuesday silences. Known by someone who didn't first meet you through your credentials. The terror of that is real. I don't want to minimize it. If you grew up as I did in a world where love felt conditional, where you had to earn your place, where need was met with withdrawal, where being difficult meant being abandoned, then being known feels like standing at the edge of something without guardrails. The part of your brain that learned early how to survive will tell you that openness is a liability, that needing someone is giving them a weapon, that real intimacy is just delayed disappointment. That part of your brain is trying to protect you. It learned those lessons in real pain. Thank it. And then make a different choice anyway. I started making different choices. Not dramatically, not all at once. The transformation that gets sold to you in highlight reels, the overnight awakening, the single decision that changes everything, that's not how actual human beings actually change. That's mythology, useful mythology sometimes. But mythology, real change, is slower and less photogenic than that. It looked like this. She asked me once how I was feeling, not how the company was doing, not what I was working on, how I was feeling. And instead of pivoting to productivity, I sat with the question. I felt the impulse to deflect rise up in me like a reflex, and I let it pass. And I said, honestly, anxious. I've been anxious for a week about a conversation I need to have with one of my partners, and I've been avoiding it by working more. That was it. That was the whole change. One honest sentence instead of a polished non-answer. She didn't fix it. She didn't offer a solution or a reframe or a motivational response. She just said, that sounds exhausting to carry alone. And I felt something release in my chest that I hadn't realized I was holding. That's presence. That's what presence actually is. Not fixing, not advising, not performing empathy, just witnessing, just making space for the real thing to exist without immediately moving to correct it. I started practicing that, first with her, then slowly, terrifyingly, with a few other people I trusted. I started saying I don't know in meetings instead of constructing an authoritative response from incomplete information. I started saying, I need a day to think about this instead of performing decisiveness. I started slowly allowing people to see the process rather than only the result. The sky did not fall. In fact, something unexpected happened. The people around me became more honest with me, as if my openness had given them permission for their own. The culture in my company shifted, almost imperceptibly at first, then noticeably, towards something less performative and more functional. Problems surfaced faster because people stopped hiding them. Decisions improved because people stopped pretending to certainty they didn't have. The personal was professional, the internal was structural, the thing I had been treating as a private liability was actually a leadership advantage. I'd been wrong about almost everything. Her parents came around. Not quickly, not completely. Families are their own architecture, structures built over decades by people trying to protect what they love through the only frameworks they had access to. You don't renovate that with a single conversation, but slowly, through time, through showing up consistently in the unglamorous ways that actually communicate character, not the impressive dinner, not the credential recitation, but the small, reliable presences. Being there when things were difficult, not disappearing when it was uncomfortable, being the same person in the living room as I was in the parking lot outside the restaurant. She told me once that her father had said something to her. She didn't tell me what it was exactly. She just said, "He said he sees you differently now." I don't know what that cost him. I imagined something. Pride has its own price. But I thought about it for a long time because what he saw differently wasn't my resume, wasn't my success, wasn't the empire metrics. What he saw differently was something I would never have known how to show if I hadn't learned, painfully, slowly, from a woman who asked me one honest question at a dinner I almost didn't attend, how to be present instead of impressive. I want to talk about collapse for a moment because I think we've gotten collapse wrong. I think we've been taught to treat the moment when the performance cracks, when the empire shows its instability, when the foundation of achievement wobbles and you feel the floor give, as a catastrophe to be prevented, a failure to be ashamed of, a sign that you didn't work hard enough or plan carefully enough. But here's what I know now that I didn't know at 31. Collapse is sometimes mercy. The structure that falls was never going to house you anyway. The empire was impressive, but it was not a home. And you were never going to tear it down yourself. You were too proud, too invested, too afraid of what people would say, too addicted to the identity it gave you. So life, which is smarter and more patient than any morning routine, found a way to let it crack open, not to punish you, to free you. The emptiness I felt in that glass office was not a sign that I had failed. It was a sign that I had succeeded at building something that was never going to be enough. And now I knew it. That was useful information, expensive to receive, priceless to have. The feeling of standing in that car, helpless, holding her hand with no plan and no metrics and no performance to offer, that was not my lowest moment. That was, though I wouldn't have the language for it until later, my most honest moment. And from honest moments, if you have the courage to stay in them rather than optimize your way out of them, something true can be built. Here is what I've learned about presence. Presence is not passive. It is not just sitting still. Presence is the active decision to bring your full, unedited self into contact with reality as it actually is. Not as you wish it were, not as it would look on a highlight reel, not as it will appear in retrospect when you've had time to frame it properly. Presence is sitting across from someone you love when they are in pain and not reaching for a solution because you can't tolerate the vulnerability of being in pain with them. Presence is asking for help before you need it desperately, which is the only time many of us have ever asked. Presence is saying, "I'm scared about this," to someone who respects you, and discovering that they respect you more, not less, because you told the truth. Presence is deciding repeatedly every day that the relationship in front of you is more important than the image of yourself you're trying to maintain. Presence is the choice to be a person instead of a performance. And I want to be honest with you, it is not a single choice. It is 1,000 choices. It is every Tuesday morning and every difficult conversation and every moment when the old reflex rises, evacuate, achieve, impress, perform, maintain control, and you choose again to stay. It is the practice of a lifetime. And it does not become easy. It becomes more familiar. It becomes more natural. But the discipline required for presence is as demanding as the discipline required for any achievement. More so in some ways because the metrics are invisible and the results are not the kind you can show anyone. I want to tell you what my life looks like now. Not to impress you, not to give you a blueprint, but because I think sometimes we need to see what the other side of the crack actually contains so the collapse doesn't just feel like destruction. I still work, I still build, I am still by any external measure ambitious. I have not traded drive for softness or traded excellence for comfort. The work still matters to me. The vision still keeps me up at night sometimes, but I work now with a different foundation underneath me. I come home. That sounds simple. It is not simple. Coming home means walking through a door and leaving at the threshold the version of myself that performs competence all day. It means sitting at a table with a woman who will ask me how I feel and actually wait for the answer. It means being a person in an evening instead of an extension of a professional identity. I ask for help, out loud, from specific people, without the verbal armor of "I was just curious what you thought," or "not that I'm struggling with this." I say, "I need help with this," and I wait in the discomfort of that sentence, and I receive what comes back. I let people finish their thoughts before I start formulating my response. This sounds trivial. It is not trivial. It was, for me, The behavioral manifestation of treating another person as a full human being rather than a problem to be solved or a resource to be leveraged. I apologize when I'm wrong without adding a but that redirects the fault elsewhere. This is surprisingly hard. The ego is creative and fast, and it will find a but at remarkable speed. Letting the apology stand alone without amendment is its own form of discipline. I notice things. I notice when she is carrying something quietly. I notice when a member of my team has been off for a week, and I ask privately, not as a performance review, but as a person who actually cares what's happening in their life. I notice the quality of Tuesday mornings again. I notice the light. Noticing is not nothing. Noticing is the beginning of presence, and presence is the only foundation on which anything real can stand. Look at me for a second. I built an empire out of fear and called it ambition. I built walls out of distance and called them standards. I built a version of myself optimized for external approval and called it identity. And I was so proud of all of it, and I was so alone inside all of it. And then a woman with her whole face laughing at a dinner I almost skipped asked me a question I couldn't answer. And her parents almost separated us, and I stood in a parking lot unable to fix anything, and the floor cracked open and I fell through it. And on the other side of the falling was something I had not expected. Ground, real ground, not the polished surface of achievement that you stand on with performance and maintain with constant effort, but actual, uneven, imperfect, permanent ground, the kind that holds you when you stop holding yourself up, the kind that was there before the empire and will be there after it, the kind that is made of real moments with real people who know the real version of you, the kind that her parents eventually stood on when they looked at me and saw someone who was there, simply, consistently, honestly there for their daughter, the kind I am standing on right now. Here's what I want to leave you with. Not a system, not a morning routine, not 5 steps to emotional availability, not a framework you can optimize and execute and present results from at your next self-review. Just this, the part of you that's running. I see it. I know it from the inside. The busyness that is also avoidance, the productivity that is also armor, the success that is also a very long and complicated way of asking the question, am I enough yet? The answer cannot be found in the next achievement, I promise you. I have been to the place where the next achievement lives, and it is exactly as quiet and hollow as the one before it, and the one before that, and the one you're planning from here. The answer, the actual answer, the one that the nervous system believes, not just the one you can cite from a book, is found in the experience of being known and staying. Being seen without the armor and remaining in the room, being present with another person in their pain without converting it to productivity, being wrong and surviving it, being scared and saying so. The answer is built the way all real things are built, one honest moment at a time. So here is my challenge to you. Not to overhaul your life, not to tear down what you've built, not to manufacture vulnerability as a new kind of performance, because that too is a trap, and the ego is sophisticated enough to turn even authenticity into a brand. Just this. Tonight. One conversation, one real answer to the question of how you're doing. Not the polished version, the true version, the one underneath. Find one person, a partner, a friend, a parent, someone who deserves the real answer and has not been given it because you have been too busy maintaining the impression of someone who has it together. And tell them the truth, not because it will fix anything, not because the metrics will improve, not because vulnerability is currently trending as a leadership competency, but because somewhere underneath the empire you've been building, there's a person who is tired of performing and ready to live, and that person deserves a home. Music, final note, silence. She's still with me. Every day she asks me how I feel, and every day I try to tell the truth, and some days I'm better at it than others, and she stays anyway. That is not a small thing. That is everything.